Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Tuesday Talks Over the Moon. It's Darren. It's Daniel. We bring you some of the best and brightest minds to talk with us. Not the best and brightest minds, but we are totally excited because we have two of, I'm going to say, the most knowledgeable theater people I've ever encountered, based on their performances on Quiz Me Kate, or at least two out of the three most knowledgeable.
The other is their best friend.
Yeah. I don't know what vortex of musical theater trivia you guys were raised in, but it's quite amazing. So we've got Annie and Becky Potter, sisters. Becky is directing our production of the Pajama Game, which started rehearsals this week. And Annie did some rewrites to the script, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you for having us. You said it first, Potter.
Sorry.
I've had the pleasure
Rivalry right away.
I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with the sisters Potter since they were teenagers, and it's really thrilling to have them both make their debut here at 42nd Street Moon on the same show together. So on a personal note, thank you, Jerry and Judy, for having amazing kids.
Tell us how you, both of you, came into this world of theater and knowledge and filling your brain space. So Annie, why don't we start with you?
Oh, sure. I was gonna say it was sort of starting with Becky in terms of, my knowledge sort of starts with Becky to a certain extent, but I will start first, I suppose. So, I'm a PhD student candidate. I'm almost done my PhD at be done in August at Columbia University, and I'm writing about the representation of history in musical theater. And so that's part of, this is a scholarly pursuit, as well as, having a long time been a, musical theater fan and performer. And so that's sort of, is this the kind of, am I too general or not general enough? I'm okay, good. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. And then also I have an interest in dramaturgy and sort of play crafting, and that's something that I studied at San Francisco State, where I got my master's degree. And so this has been an exciting way to sort of think about how to keep working with plays and to, rewrite things to as I think that when Darren and I talked about this, he was like, which bits make you cringe in the Pajama Game? And it was sort of like, so that's sort of what was sort of one of my guiding principles. Yeah. Was that good? And I grew up doing theater in the Bay Area. That's my, so this is
now,
exciting.
When was your first show? You were what?
My first show that
Ever.
I was in a summer camp production of Camelot when I was 5 or 6. I played Tom of Warwick. That was my was that the first one? And I guess my first professional gig was playing Marta in Sound of Music when I was 7. So yeah.
Very ladder quickly.
Yeah.
Hey, Becky, correct all of her errors.
Oh no, that's about it. We started. I started theater pretty early too. Performing. In elementary school, and our mom is not a theater person, but our grandmother was a theater person, so sort of skipped a generation. But Judy Potter is a big fan of the theater, and so it was very encouraging and took me to auditions and took me every place, and wound up at the Willows Theater in 1996, which got hired there for my first show by Cindy Goldfield. Moon, legend. So this is all such a full circle experience for me right now. So I started. I think that my deep love of musical theater was definitely nurtured at the Willows. Andy Holtz, Ron Pickett, people who are just like, here's some more shows you should listen to. Here's some more things you should, that just over the years, I just loved everything about it. I remember picking up the Pajama Game album at Tower Records in Concord, across the street from the Willows, and that, along with Dan Yankees and Sweet Charity, and those were that was my rotation, for a summer. I just went on and studied drama at UC Irvine. I got my master's at San Francisco State. We follow each other. She follows me. She follows me. I'm older,
you haven't gone to Columbia yet, by the way.
I was Columbia, yeah.
I was like, Becky was really first, because I just went and did a lot of things Becky did after Becky did them. That was sort of...
And then she did them better.
And better.
Well, that was going to be my question. Annie, are you going to make her refer to you as Dr. Potter?
Oh,
from
Oh,
the
I will be referring to
no,
her.
but there was a show that Becky we were working on where I was stage managing for Becky's a show Becky's working on with a bunch of her students at from Oakland School of the Arts, and they were like, "Oh, well, Becky's already Ms. Potter, so we're going to call you," and they all just called me Dr. Potter, and I was like, "Ah, how the optimism of youth." It was cute, yeah.
Nice. So, one of the things we talked about, Moon's mission in terms of how the company started and reviving lesser produced shows, and as that mission has evolved and we're looking at newer shows in addition to older shows. When we look at the Pajama Game, it's one of those titles that uh, most people have heard of, but it really kind of flies under the radar when you compare it. It came out in 1954, and you put it up against some of the musicals of that era, where Rodgers and Hammerstein were on their tear, and you've got a few years from West Side Story and My Fair Lady and The Music Man, all these towering titles in the canon. This show ran for 2 years. It won the Best Musical Tony. It's got an incredible score. Hey There and Hernando's Hideaway and Steve Heat. The people that worked on this show, you've got Jerome Robbins and Bob Fosse and George Abbott.
Fosse's debut, right?
Yeah, as a
Yeah.
choreographer on Broadway. And in the cast, you got John Reid and Janice Page. The pedigree of this show is outstanding. So why do you think it's kind of flown under the radar? You've got companies who will do The Sound of Music 12 times before they'll do the Pajama Game. So, Annie, we'll start with you. Why do you think that is?
Oh, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not totally sure. I mean, I think I wonder. I was interested in this idea that you were sort of bringing up about Babe sort of being a less ingenue character, which in some ways is a really interesting a difference in Pajama Game. I was thinking about how we have so much of those sort of A couple, B couples that are very similarly laid out in early shows. Like you sort of have the sort of virginal soprano-y ingenue in someone like in Oklahoma, or in in Guys and Dolls, which is another one I always think about in this era as well, and thinking about how that's so that's very different than what we see in the Pajama Game. It was like a real break from that, and I wonder if maybe that's part of the sort of a shift away from some of the sort of very standard structures of some of the Golden Age musicals. I'm not. Yeah, that's
Such an interesting answer, because part of why Daniel and I love the show is it's a strong woman leading
right.
people to change that's important.
Right, and of course, there's other shows that sort of push against that as well. But it's interesting to sort of see that I think in especially with vocally where Babe sits too, compared to other characters. Absolutely, yeah. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, you listed all the ones I was going to say. I mean, the 1950s was an embarrassment of riches for Broadway musicals. I mean, we're coming out of, we've already had, in 1954, we've already had Guys and Dolls and Call Me Madam and A Wonderful Town, and yet to come is, I mean, every 2 years, Rodgers and Hammerstein are popping out a show at this point still. This is the decade of Lerner and Loewe. It's like there's so much going on. There's when you think of 1950s musicals, I mean, this one is one that always pops to my mind partially because of the score, and I love it. And also, I grew up a belter, and so Babe was always like this very identifiable role for me too. Just such a strong character. So yeah, I mean, it's a little different. I think maybe again, it's sort of it's contemporarily placed in the 50s. It's happening then and there, and so. Now it's sort of a nostalgic piece. At the time, it was more of a contemporary piece, so it that has a different place than like a show, say like The King and I, that takes you to a different time and a different place, and will always do that. So this show has sort of you have to look at it a different way.
I was going to say, this is interesting. I just watched this fabulous.
Feel free to interrupt each other, friends. It's a conversation.
We do all the time.
Human beings that like each other. Yeah.
I was just thinking about different places, Potter, and how that's one of the things that in that Bernstein that made for TV thing where he talks about musical comedy versus operetta. His definition is that operetta happens away in some way, like is outside of the main. Well, actually, interestingly, he says outside of like New York. Really, like anything that's not in New York City is operetta, and anything in New York City is musical comedy. Is sort of his like differentiation. So of course that sort of and then in which case like Pajama Game ends up being sort of a strange space because it's not really so far away that everyone really talks that differently than they would talk in New York, right? Necessarily, I would say, but it is definitely like still within this contemporary moment as opposed to being like set in the past or in the like really far away. I don't know. It's just yeah.
Interesting to note, though, that the '73 revival was a massive flop. Also directed by the original director, the legendary George Abbott, who play doctored almost everything that was worked on for 20 years. And the original production also was for one of Hal Prince's first productions as a producer. The '73 revival played less performances than the '06 revival, which went on to win the best revival of the musical, even though it played, I think, 126 performances and 41 of those were previews. Who checked Wikipedia this morning. So interesting to note that the revivals, like La Cage, every time it's revived, it wins the Tony. It continues to be successful. And, there's something to the heart of Pajama Game that I think this production has really gotten right, our production here at Moon, that I think will bring back Pajama Game in people's hearts and memories. The film is, does everyone feel like it's clunky?
It's not as successful as the stage version. How about that?
So yeah. I think, come to Moon for your first Pajama Game and hopefully the Pajama Game of the future.
You talked about, you touched on placement and time period of shows, and it's an interesting thought when you talk about shows taking place away, and you look at all of those titles that we've mentioned. They either take place in far off lands in Austria or the South Pacific, or else in a highly stylized, non-realistic version. The New York of Guys and Dolls is not something that exists. But this show is people in a factory in Iowa in the present day. So maybe there was something at that time that people, it was very successful at that time, but if I always look at theater as a form as escapism, and maybe that has something to do with why it wasn't far enough away from people later on to grab them in a way that so many other shows take you out of your time and place. But that said, the main subplot of this show is about the struggle between labor and management, about factory workers, unions, the struggle of the middle class at a time when the middle class was actively clamoring to grow, to increase their power, to increase their wealth. I think we could find some parallels in today's society. The struggle to get by. How do you think audiences can relate to that? How can they touch into that, Becky? And are you doing anything to play that up?
Yeah, I think particularly right now, maybe not even 2 years ago when you had originally intended to do this production, but today, when we're looking at, Amazon and Starbucks and slowly starting to, having more unionized, and certainly that's in the news, in the zeitgeist right now, and the idea that these CEOs launching themselves into space, and that the people working for them can take more action in order to, make their careers and their livelihoods, mean more or more, to what they deserve, right? And so I think that's the heart of the Pajama Game for me. Yes, there's these lovely, romances going on, but to me, and I've got it right here, I've pulled it up. I think the thesis of the Pajama Game is Babe's line in Act 2. She's talking to him, after the first riff they have, and she says, "Haven't you heard? I'm the sweetheart of Local 343, Associated Garment Workers of North America. My gosh, Sid, I warned you. I told you. You know all about how I felt. I happen to think there are certain things a person has to stand for in this life, but I guess you forgot all about that." And I think that just really speaks to, speaks to where we are as a country and as a community. And I think that no matter where what part of society you're operating in right now, that is something that you can hold on to and feel compassion for right now. And so I think that is I think that's where
Kamala said that to Doug on their second date too.
Yeah, she probably did. Yeah. Yeah.
So we kind of alluded to this, but back in the before times, pre-COVID, when we first announced the show, which was actually in 2019, we had gotten permission from the royalty holders and from the various estates to take a look at the script and look at some of the things that I think Aaron's word was cringe, and I think that's probably an okay word to use, and make some adjustments and try to see what we could find in this script that could, keep the themes, keep the messages, keep the plots, but kind of play down things that were accepted, if not right, in the 1950s. So, Annie, when we approached you about doing some rewrites to this, what were you looking for, and how do you think, how successful do you think you were?
I think that I was looking for anything that made me sort of like, oh, this would make, like, if I was seeing the show today, I'd be like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. Like, this is a moment that I'd be like, oh, I don't feel like, and trying to sort of think about more things about that. I was really looking at to sort of keep some of the, like sort of the sexual freedom that like Babe has in the show, and actually that a number of characters really have in this show, right? Because we have like Gladys and Hines are also like a couple who are apparently a couple, but like not married, right? There's a lot of like sort of out of marriage kinds of relationships in the show. And I wanted to keep that like interest, but also, have just more equality really between how characters were, interacting with each other. So there was less like sort of coercive feeling behavior going on. And I think that some of that stuff, like, obviously that some of that can be like, less troubling in performance, but like just reading the script, especially looking at it, I was like, oh, wow, this is, how do we fix, like, I don't know, something like small talk, which I feel like has this very sort of coercive quality to it, but it's also supposed to be fun, right? How can we keep it fun so it doesn't have that sort of coercive quality? So those are some things that I don't know how much I'm supposed to talk about what we've done. I don't want to like spoil anything, but so things of that nature that and like I talked, speaking of our I talked to Lena Moy Morgan about some of these things a lot, and we discussed how we would what we would like to see changed. Now I'm what else was I, and just like sort of little things too, just throughout things that I was like, this is not a big deal, this thing that happens here, this is not an important troubling line, so I'm just gonna change it a little bit so that it doesn't we don't have to have sort of, because there's a number of just like very casually, sort of casual spousal abuse things and casual racism, that were just very accepted in the 1950s that we don't really have to hold on to anymore. They're not the things about the shows that I think are worth keeping, I guess.
This speaks directly to what one of Moon's core values now, which is to make shows that are perfectly lovely and wonderful, palatable in the 2022s and in this century and this decade. And we did that swimmingly with our production of Grand Night for Singing, where we took these classical songs, thanks to Miss Goldfield and her team, and we gave them, we kept the heart of them the same, but we changed the modern meaning. And I think that's really important. We don't want to see these musicals never be produced because they have some clunky moments, because at their core, this is a perfect example of an early 50s musical, and the score is incredible. And thanks to Annie, the book is too now.
Oh, I also follow the principle that is my don't add, just subtract principle. I try to just, sort of remove things rather than like trying to add a lot of things in to make things work better. So that's something that's just an interest. That's sort of a principle that I try to use when I'm doing this kind of work generally. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Comes from cutting Hamlet a few times.
Yeah, we've cut Hamlet a number of times in different situations, and when you do Hamlet, you're just like, just subtract. This is like, how can we, yeah.
Never know.
We just compared Hamlet to Pajama Game, friends.
But it was fascinating that what I was saying is just the fact that you took a he said, she said line and flipped it, and that made the power dynamic totally different without affecting the overall romantic arc of the show. And I think it's just wonderful to come in with a open eye and a wide lens and critical thinking and be able to make these changes. Now, Pajama Game, as originally produced, was a big show.
Well, I was hoping he was going to go here next.
28 actors, I think, in the original cast. Moon excels at doing nice intimate shows with 6 people and 9 people, and then we turn around and take a show like this and scale it down to 14. So Becky, what challenges have you found in
Yeah, well, I'm sure Renee, our choreographer, is experiencing them even more so than I am. But yeah, having a tight cast, I like having a small intimate space cast. It'll work nicely in our small intimate space. But yeah, there are challenges of like, oh, I need to get these 3 people off so that they can come back on and do this new thing. And it's as I'm staging it, I'm looking at, oh, we're in and out and up and down because there's just a lot going on in this show. But yeah, it's I think it's going to work out lovely. I think given the way that Annie worked out the script and the way that we've juggled who's gonna do what, that we have a very solid, very solid show in terms of a little more chambery Pajama Game. Still going to be, lots of dancing and lots of movement and fun, but just a little bit more in your face.
Daniel, can you talk a little bit about what we've done with the score? Our music director is Armando Fox, everyone, also making his Moon debut on this project. And Renee Deweese is our choreographer, and she is also in the show. But talk to us, Daniel, a little bit about what we're doing orchestrally with the piece.
Well, I think one of the challenges and pleasures of music directing a Moon show is knowing that we have an intimate space, knowing that we're not going to have 17 pieces in the Gateway Theater playing the score. So, we're very fortunate that we get people like Armando and Dave Dabrowski, obviously, who's been with us for years, and people who are really, really skilled pianists who can make that instrument sound like multiple people and find the right parts of it. But then to find the 2 or 3 additional musicians that are really going to color that score the way it needs to be colored. And Armando has talked about finding the show is originally scored with a very golden age sound, a lot of strings and lushness, but when you parse that score down, there's a lot of jazz in it. There's a lot of 50s harmonies that, which is why some of the songs like Hey There and Hernando's Hideaway became pop standards, because they do have that feel at their core. And so he's working with a reed player and a brass player to really kind of get to that sound, which I think will be a lot of fun in approaching some of these numbers. But still, when the ballads are there, the ballads are going to soar, the ballads are going to be lush and beautiful. But I always find it to be an exciting challenge of going, oh, I've got 2 people with me, and let's look at this score and let's make it this. It's fun. I hate it. It's fun.
I love that answer.
Fine.
Okay. So Becky and Annie, in terms of like your energy and your tone, how do you set the rehearsal energy? How do you keep people in the room motivated, Becky?
Well, I grew up at the Willows Theater, so I have a Rich Elliotism for everything, and the one for that I hold near and dear to my heart and will apply to this show is louder, faster, funnier, which for the Pajama Game works out just fine. Doesn't work for every show. Doesn't work for Hamlet. Actually, sometimes it does work for Hamlet. Hamlet's better when it's louder, faster, funnier. But with the Pajama Game, there are of course lovely moments we're going to sit into. Hey There is not going to be louder, faster, funnier, but that the coming into a rehearsal space with the kind of rehearsal time, kind of crunch that we have here is exciting to me, because we've got lots of things going on and lots of things to do, and it's fun, and I'm just having a positive energy of, yep, let's do this, let's get it done, let's move on to the next thing, and let's get it all up so we can tell the story. So
our rehearsal studios are certainly buzzing, all 3 of them in use at some points during each rehearsal night.
There's a color-coded rehearsal schedule. I worked hard on it.
I don't love a good color-coded. Another Rich Elliotism.
Annie, having worked on this show, does this give you some sort of excitement to give me the next show? Let's see what we can do to I don't want to call any shows out here on this little interview, but does your mind start going like, ooh, next I could get this one or this one or this one and this one? Can I say
work on a road show?
Century American musical theater?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I guess to a certain extent, like I both love old musicals, and I also want to like support the idea of doing like new works that don't have to have this kind of work to them. So I want to like put that out there as like both. I think both are really useful and exciting. No, I love being able to sit down and like the idea that I'd be, I don't know, allowed to do this. I'm frankly, I mean, I'm sort of have been toying for a long time with trying to figure out what to do to Kiss Me Kate. This is something that I've written about, and like how one might do. Like I sort of just want to redo Kiss Me, like take the book and like do a new backstage musical version. I don't know.
Shakespeare. All you've done this entire interview, both of you, is just trash Shakespeare. It's just
what? No, I mean that's.
Just don't start trashing Neil Simon, or I'm out. Or Steven.
No, but
Simon. Do you want to write a musical from scratch, Annie Potter? Like, I feel like you should do that.
I don't feel like I'm talented enough, but I mean, like, yeah, I don't really have the skill set to do that or the training to do that. But, you know, that was always an idea one day, but yeah.
I think put you in the right room with the right composer and the right book writer, and the three of you would, like, hum along.
Something would happen.
Yeah, well, no, but
way to build your sister up, Beck.
No, there's lots of. I mean, there's a whole bunch of shows that I think could be like, because like some shows I think are consigned to like they'll be really hard to fix. I think, but shows that are like I feel like Pajama Game is a really good example of a show. Like fixing feels like a weird thing to say, but a show that you can make. I think as Darren said, like more palatable. There's a lot of shows from I mean, because like I feel like I think Guys and Dolls is going to need some revamping before people start doing Guys and Dolls again, like shows like I don't know what they're going to do exactly, but I feel like you can't really just have the Havana
What's
sequence.
What's wrong with marry the man today and change his ways tomorrow, Annie?
That is not my biggest concern about Guys and Dolls, but but there's things like that I feel like are that would be exciting to keep working on, and I mean I don't have any other like projects besides thinking about what to do to Kiss Me Kate one day, but otherwise
But yeah, I think there's sort of a larger debate or about keeping musicals as they are, as these older musicals as museum pieces versus giving them a little bit more life, or and I think that sometimes there's a lot of question about what that's worth. And I feel like what we're doing here at Moon, what you guys have allowed Annie to work on is sort of like the best of both worlds. Like it is the original, we're giving you the Pajama Game, but with just making it, just taking out taking out the cringe. It's just making it so that everyone can enjoy it today. We're not, giving you a Daniel Fisher, Oklahoma style Pajama Game. We're giving you, this is truly, Renee and I were talking about is this gritty factory realism, or is this super shiny musical comedy? And I'm like, I think it lives somewhere in between. I think it lives in this this is an Iowa factory, but it is also a musical comedy, and in the 1950s. And so there's there is a lot of heart and things to nurture in it, but it is also not something that we have to make super modern in order for it to resonate. It resonates just the way it is. It just needs a little bit of polish, which Annie has done beautifully.
Two things there. First of all, for serving chili during intermission, then I'm all for it.
Oh my God.
Second of all, the Pajama Game by way of Urinetown.
Oh yes.
That would be a different production of
we are excited because we have a number of projects coming down the pipeline in which we're going to continue this mission of looking at some of these shows and seeing what can be done and putting them in a more modern, viewing them through a more modern lens while still celebrating what is great about them and putting them alongside contemporary shows, such as Fun Home, such as some of the shows we're going to be doing next season, and celebrating musical theater as an art form. Becky, Annie, this has been great. The Pajama Game opens June 2nd and runs through June 19th at the Gateway Theater in San Francisco. www.42ndstreetmoon.org. Tickets are selling crazy fast already, so get in there, get your tickets. We're going to have a great time, and not least because the two of you have been working on this project, and we're so grateful for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Potters.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, thank you for spending a few minutes with us on Tuesday Talks Over the Moon. And then we hope to see you at the Gateway Theater in June. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you all later.